Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's a whole situation of, Macy and Harry. I like that whole back and forth of them trying to figure it out. Because obviously, once again, I love that aspect about Macy coming at this from a scientist. From a scientific point of view, this whole situation of imbuing the dead with magic, she finds it interesting on a science fictional angle. But she'd find it more fascinating if it wasn't so diabolical. But obviously, her and Harry get the idea of like, well, if they're only resurrecting the dead, that means they haven't found a way to give magical powers to the living. So it's kind of like we need to stomp on this immediately before things completely turn sideways, and with the faction. So, and obviously then she gets a text from Julian, and it's like, oh, she was supposed to meet in 10 minutes. I'll reschedule. But Harry's like, no. There's always going to be something, so you can't put your life on pause. So, Macy goes, meets with him. He gives her a necklace because he wants to take this relationship to the next step. Because he's like, if you want to, kind of back out if there's someone else. She's like, no. It's just, obviously things are complicated. And, he gives her that. And obviously, Mel and Maggie, who are training with Jordan, which also showing you Maggie's the badass that she is. Because even Mel's like, I used to be able to kick your butt. And Maggie's like, you want to go another round? And she's like, what? Just so you can show off in front of Jordan? It's like, no. But they walk down and they see that. It's like, oh my God, did he propose to you? And Macy's like, what? No. And the fact is, that's kind of interesting too, that she had that, at first she's kind of joking, like, no. And then she had to be serious, like, no. He seriously did not propose. Like, the fact that she had to she had that quick reaction kind of goes like, obviously that's something she's potentially looking for in the future, but I think it makes her nervous to even think like, oh, that's even a suggestion. But the moment she was like, maybe we should keep this between us, because at first she's like, I don't want to wear, don't want any smoke demon taking it off of her and have to explain how he lost it and stuff like that. It's like, let's keep this between us. And you can tell in that moment, like, Maggie and Mel look at each other, it's like they know this is about Harry. But obviously it's like there's an attack in Oakland and they show up to protect a witch, and it's a whole bunch of bee demons because they're from that particular group of demons. What are they? It was something with a C. Those demons, and in particular it's this dude named Alfie. He's kind of like apparently like the next in line to kind of be taking over. Well, he is in facto leader to a certain extent, and obviously they're like, he's like, oh, do you know who I am? And they're like, no, but it doesn't matter, like, kind of get away from this witch. But it's like he didn't want to back down, so they attack, and the charm ones kill him. I was like, oh, the power 3 didn't do anything. I was like, oh no, it proceeded to kill him and every other demon that had formed together with him. And I love that line of him disappearing. He's like, you don't know what you've just done. I like that because it was a joke with the super best friends. They would always talk about that, like, oh, you've made a grave mistake. You don't know what you've done. It's always that nice line of the villain. You're like, what the hell does that mean? Those are the most ominous final words anyone can ever give you. So it kind of fell in line with that. So it immediately made me go, oh, that's interesting. So I was like, how is this going to backfire them? Well, it turns out them doing this is wiping out one of the leaders that's at the top of one of the, the subgroups of the demons. And it's like, now it turns into a power vacuum. And now it's like, all right, people want the charmed one's head. And now this puts Abigail in a very complicated situation because obviously she has a truce with the charmed one. She's not that bent out of shape about Alfie being dead, but now this compromises her position. So her and the Charmers have a meet up, and she's blaming them for this. It's like, you didn't give us the heads up. You were supposed to kind of control things on your side. And I really thought it was interesting. Like Mel and Macy were all down for it. It's like, maybe we take you on, and maybe we start with you, Abigail. And like Macy was down for that, but it was Maggie who had to play. She had to play the role of mediator, which was kind of interesting. And now because obviously it's like, this isn't good for either one of their sides because a war would end badly for Abigail, because at the end of the day, it's like there will be major losses on both sides, so they have to find a way to replenish this. Well, obviously, Abigail takes them to meet someone that could potentially closed his power vacuum. It wasn't the demon's name? Her name's Les. What's interesting too, it's like because Maggie's like, wait, is Les as in this person? Like she's like the biggest influencer, like 10 million followers and stuff like that. Because they go to her place and it's like a place full of influencers and stuff like that. It's like, well, demons have to make a living too, which is very interesting. I mean, because even like Macy was like, oh yeah, like selling products to people to make them realize make them feel like they're not good enough. Yeah, that sounds like demon work. And it's interesting because it's like influencing people. That's always kind of like associated with demons anyway. Like oh, demons and even the devil will whisper into your ears and kind of pull you towards evil. So it's just interesting to kind of see it kind of fits in that nature. And I'm sure when you break it down, there's like layers upon layers, or just kind of like, yeah, just kind of like that industry in general. I'm sure there's a couple people in Hollywood, they'll probably joke, that are demons. Like, you know, I'm sure the show could potentially take that lane of like that level of like, I mean, and that's so interesting too, because that means like, because I mean, that was a thing in the original show too. Like, you never really knew. Once again, Cole is a great example. He literally was under the Charmed One's noses for a while before they found out, oh, he was in hell. I mean, even using this show, for example, Parker being a half demon, like that went unnoticed. So it's a thing of like, they're probably in every lane of society. I mean, that's how they kind of keep in power and stuff like that. I mean, and even what Abigail said of like, demons have to make a living too. They tried to talk to Les, and she was reluctant at first because it was like, why would I join with the Charmed Ones? She's not too concerned about like keeping this peace because it really means nothing for her. But Abigail suggesting like, you know, it's like you could fill that vacuum. It's like there's never been a woman in her position to take control of like one of the groups of the demons, so it's like this could be a perfect opportunity for you. But even she recognized what Abigail was doing. It's like, this isn't about looking at me like, oh, trying to put a woman in power. It's like, no, you just need someone there to kind of back your play, basically have your back, you know, because all the other demons kind of aren't too on her side about a lot of stuff. But if she's there kind of backing Abigail, then they'll kind of more likely fall in line because of it. And that plan and all that immediately goes to shit because, hey, Godric busted Parker out. I was like, man, this is literally the worst time. And Parker showed up because for him, it's like, well, he didn't know they were meeting with the Charmed Ones. He just wanted to take Abigail out because it's like, oh, you've basically ruined my life. You capture, because I mean, I think more so than anything, he's pissed at her because it's like, because of her and her manipulation, things between him and Maggie like went to shit. So but when the time came, I mean, I think this speaks volume. Who did he grab? Yes, he got Maggie out, but he got Macy out too. Sadly, Mel wasn't close enough, and because that would have also meant being closer to his sister. So there was a no-win situation in that moment, just like getting everybody out in that moment without complicated things. But the fact is, he could have just grabbed Maggie and bounced, but he grabbed Macy too. But obviously for Maggie, she's not willing to listen to Parker because he's like being apologetic about everything. But she's like, despite you being apologetic, it doesn't matter. You still did what you did. So I can't trust you and everything. Because Parker's like, he made the deal with Godric of like, it isn't just about killing his sister and taking over the throne. He just wanted to get back at her for ruining his life. But at the same time, it's like, Godric said, like, once I kind of did what I did, like, I'd be free of my obligations. I could leave. Like, he never wanted the throne. But at the same time, it's like, you know, he ended up, yeah, it was the apples, but there was also a level of it fed on what was already there inside of him to, you know, create that situation in the first place. And now, like, Maggie and Parker have this complicated situation, which even Macy's like, I get your complication, but we need Parker's help. And he's like, you can trust me with this whole situation, because it turns out Godric is planning on killing both Mel and Abigail in front of like a summit of demons, and that way at this particular summit he'll be able to get, like, he'll be bestowed upon the power. So that basically all of this was his play at taking control, especially considering Parker isn't the one that's going to take control. He's like, I might as well take the throne because I know what's best for the demon world. Abigail kind of goes about things. Like, Abigail is going about things her own way, so that's why, you know, there's that angle to the whole thing. But obviously, they're locked up and everything. Obviously, for Abigail, she's a little upset because it's like, I did a little too good of a job preparing the cell. It's like, well, you know, future thought, you know, if they ever made it out of this alive. And I like that she manipulates the situation, manipulates those demons. And it's like, you could, like, in the grand scheme of things, I had a feeling like she was bluffing, but I'm like, you still could have gave Mel kind of the heads up. But I guess it's like, we need to kind of jump on this quick. Like, this way, your reactions are genuine. Because I even love, like, Mel going off on her, calling her a foe. what was it, faux woke or something like that. And Abigail was like, all this other stuff you said about me is very true about me being a backstabber, demon, blah blah blah, but faux woke, at never, so they would get out, but were immediately caught by Godric. It's like, probably before killing those demons, we probably should have went ahead and found a way to get these cuffs off first. So luckily, Parker shows up, and Maggie and Macy are invisible, and we're able to free Abigail and Mel, but not fast enough before it ends up wearing off. And then Macy steps in and like shoots out like almost like green lightning or something, and it like zaps Godric back, but it also stops everyone else. I'm like, whoa. I was like, this is what I'm talking about. I was like, that's so dope, because that means that her powers are a little different. I thought that was kind of interesting, because like for me, I brought it up before, like her powers seemed like they were still the same, like she still had telekinesis. So is it just a fraction of what is this an extension of her telekinesis? Like it's shapeshifted in this much, like Mel's abilities adapted and so did Maggie's. I was wondering or is this kind of another ability on top of it? Because everyone else still has just the one ability. They don't have the double up like in the original show. But that's what I'm curious, because like she ended up talking about it. She was like, it kind of explained it as she can stop people. So it's almost like Mel's powers, but it seems like it's more like rather than a freezing time, it seems like a paralytic ability. It's like almost like she sends lightning through your body. It kind of took, because with the exception of the green, like the electricity and just the power, it reminds me a little bit of Jada's ability, but that came from her being part witch and part white lighter. But I don't know. Not unless that's supposed to be a substitute for her demon abilities. Like maybe her body, like her power as a charmed one is compensating for the fact is like, oh, like you no longer have your demon side, so now it's compensating for that. Or maybe this is like because like all her demon side is supposed to be out, not unless there's still some fragment of it still being a core of her DNA, and so that power reflects that. Maybe not. Once again, I'm more likely overthinking it, but I think it's just such an interesting thing, because of like there was no hints of it, because it just seemed like she had telekinesis, but it's like, no, there's definitely more to her abilities. Kind of fully understanding that is definitely going to be interesting. I'm curious what they're going to describe that ability as. Like I said, it seemed like a paralytic ability, so I thought that was kind of fascinating. But I also thought it was kind of neat the whole Parker's talking to Abigail about like, oh, you can't go back, because she's like, bro, don't even try the whole caring brother thing. It makes me sick, you even trying that. But it's like they used a knife to cut away his demon side, because he was hoping, I was like, the moment he did, I was like, you're thinking that you and maybe Maggie could get back together. I was like, oh, that's going to complicate the whole her and Jordan thing, which we'll get to that later on. But the fact is that you kind of feel bad for Parker, because you're like, oh, like he's always struggled with his demon side and everything. He wanted nothing more to be human. Even he's like, it's kind of messed up. My dad had that knife the entire time and never once used it or even told me it was an option, because obviously his dad always had big plans for him to become the source. So it's like, of course, he needed you to still keep your demon side, because if you were just a human, it would have been disgusting to him. It's like, oh, like you're a disgusting human, you're less than, but as a half-breed, at least you can be something more, at least you serve some purpose. So that's the whole situation with his dad. At the end of the day, Maggie still, it's like, yeah, I get it. It's a good thing. Hey, like the fact is that you're trying to be better. That's good. And I wish you all the best of luck with it. But it's like there's too much history between us, because despite you being human now, it doesn't take away from the fact is, once again, all the stuff you did, that wasn't just like some demon side of you. That was just some core part of you, your own jealousy, your own ambition that led you to do with your own self. Yes, the apples, were a good chunk of it, but once again, they amplified what was already there. Like that was already rooted in you, and the apples just kind of brought it to the surface and just amplified what was already there. So that was kind of on you. So for her, it's like there's no future between us, and it's like it's sad, because all Parker wanted was to kind of be with Maggie all over, and it's sad to see things kind of sadly work out this way. But it also, at the same time, you're like, oh, that sucks. But at the same time, you're like, oh, but there's the whole Jordan situation. He's still with his girlfriend, isn't he? I could be mistaken. I think they did break up, didn't they? I don't remember that. Let me know in the comments down below. They probably was a line of oh, they broke up, and I'm like, I feel like I remember that being a thing. Because when him and Maggie were about to kiss for the first time, Wasn't that around the time that him and his girlfriend had broken up? I don't remember. Like I said, it was probably handled and I just don't remember regardless. So it kind of go like, oh, sucks for Parker. But hey, Jordan, yay, things, that means, hey, something can happen between them because obviously they really hit it off. But now it does beg the question, like, what's going to happen with Parker? He no longer has his demon abilities. I mean, obviously, like, for Abigail, she was able to cut them away, but it's like, I guess, once you cut them away, there's no, like, doing what she did with, well, I mean, I don't know if she could, even if she wanted to, pull away, like, maybe she could. Like, so maybe now she has Parker's abilities. They didn't really go on and explain that, but remember, she got Macy's abilities as well, so that's why she can do the double fireball, but maybe now that she has Macy's powers, there's no room in her to have Parker's powers, so maybe they just disappear, or maybe she did get them. Like I said, they didn't make note of that. I'd assume she'd end up getting his abilities, not less, because it's the same knife that gave her Macy's abilities in the first place, if I remember correctly, but like I said, I could be remembering wrong, but still, so that's kind of an interesting angle to that whole thing. So I just thought that was kind of, fascinating in the long run of like, oh, Parker's human now. It's like, what that? Well, I mean, the demons won't come after him because, I mean, him no longer being a demon, he doesn't serve any purpose. I mean, granted, he could still be hunted down for food, but he knows the demon world at least well enough to kind of know where to avoid being around. But I'm curious to see what that kind of means for him. Like, is this the last we've seen of Parker? Will he come back? Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I mean, this puts him in a very unique position with this whole faction thing that's going down. He could end up playing a role in that where it's like, oh, he tries to help out because it's like, I'm trying to do good, make up for the bad that I've done, which immediately my brain like, well, that could be a situation where he ends up sacrificing himself and, to fight the faction, getting in the inner circle and ended up dying because of it, trying to do good. So maybe that's an angle they could go. Like I said, that's me just kind of reading super far into the future of like whether or not that could be the thing. But so there's that. There was even this interesting moment between Mel and Abigail where Mel was like, hey, like, it's like you don't have to worry about that demon world stuff. I mean, granted, they're going to be coming after you and stuff like that. But now, maybe with everything that's going down, maybe you'll be more willing to kind of tap into your witch side and kind of be on the more witch side rather than demon side. Which obviously Abigail is like, evil kind of looks better on me. I kind of do that. I do bad in a good way, so she does bad with style, that's what I'm trying to say. So, but then she also said like, oh, I can, but now this whole experience has taught me like the whole like, oh, maybe I can go approach things from a more bi-magical approach. And I think that's interesting because I'm like, because she has kind of avoided too much of her witch side. She's always been more heavily on her demon side. But part of me was wondering like, I read too much into it because I was definitely reading too much out. And even Mel kind of had a look on her face. I was like, was that like a slight like flirtation with Mel? I'm most likely reading too much into that, but I took that as like an innuendo of not just only meaning like bias and like, oh, her powers, but also her own sexuality. I was like, all right, was that a subtle hint that like, oh, I'm kind of open, like maybe she sees Mel in a different way, like that maybe she kind of likes Mel now. And I'm like, oh, because out of any of them, I mean, granted, they all kind of have beef with her in different ways because I mean, Maggie has a whole complicated Parker situation, Macy has a whole complicated Harry situation, and Mel just downright doesn't like her, and she just downright doesn't like Mel. So it's like, because they're very, like, I think, heavy, like, very stubborn and people, so they kind of lock heads the most in that regard, because I think there's almost, like, similarity in that. But I was like I said, I was most likely reading too much into that, but I was just like, was that just, like, her subtly hitting on Mel? Like I said, probably not, but whatever the case may be. But that's going to be interesting to see, like, what Abigail ends up doing now. You're basically going to run because everyone's going to be gunning for you now. At the same time, there's the whole other side of the episode where, like the information that Harry and Macy had found out was like the place in Iowa that where all the bodies that were being used by the faction was being shipped to. And now it's like, oh, now they realize just how big the faction is because they can be potentially a worldwide organization, which kind of comes as no surprise considering the fact is we know that Julian, being the big, like what the billionaire that he is, that his aunt has access to money and power as well, so she funds his operation. Now, whether this existed before her or whether she was a start of it, once again, I still believe that this ties into Julian's parents dying. Like, it had to be like magical reasons that they died. He just doesn't know it yet, or maybe we'll get the twist that he is involved in all this. That's always just kind of been something I've gone back and forth on, but regardless, Harry went to go investigate, but can't get in there because, hey, it's a magical warded place. Like, they've set up stuff to keep all magical people out, so he can't just, like, warp in. So he goes to the next person he could ask for help, and that's Jordan, because Jordan's the only person he can ask for help, because it's like, not only are you human, you're the only human that we're kind of tight with that knows the truth about what's going on. And I even love Jordan kind of being hesitant, because he's like, other than you stealing my ring and you just kind of lurking around, I don't know that much about you. It's like Harry has to break down, like, okay, I'm a white lighter. He's like, give me strength. I'm a white lighter. Fact of the matter is, basically at the end of the day, my job is to protect these 3 women. And the fact of the matter is, they're all decently close to you. One in particular is very, very getting close to you. Obviously, that the whole Maggie situation. He's like, so, it's like, so my protection of them extends to you as well. So I thought that was interesting. So it's like, when the time comes, and I love, like, him not being able to handle the whole warping thing. He's like, oh God, it feels like I got bees in my stomach. It's like, yeah, one of the side effects is you might throw up, and it's like, or the fact of the matter is, on some occasions, it comes out the other end. It's like, you could have gave me warning. It's like, I told you there'd be side effects. I didn't go into specifics. So it's like, hey, here's this potion. It's basically going to fake it, make it look like you're dead, because that's the only way we're going to get in here. Like, almost like some Romeo and Juliet thing. He's like, you do know that Romeo and Juliet died, like super died, right? And Harry kind of quotes it a little bit, and he's like, because it's like, kind of wake you with the kiss. And even Jordan was like, oh, so are you going to kiss me to wake me up? It's like, no, this is just enough to slow down your heart to appear dead, So they died by their own hands, is essentially what he was saying. It's like, and Jordan's like, no, oh, okay, I got it. So but he's willing to do whatever he can to kind, because it's like, Harry's like, I get it. Like, obviously Maggie is very important to you. So the fact that you're willing to go this far for her, which even he's like, yeah, but this is also a selfish thing of, I still got to balance the scales. So he's willing to kind of take those risks, because I mean, if he doesn't, the curse doesn't just stop with him. Obviously, it continues throughout his future generations. So he's not just looking out for himself. He's looking out for his kids and his kids' kids. The generations to come. So. But Harry's like, but still at the end of the day, you're kind of doing this for Maggie, and for him, it's like the complicated thing of like, it's either a situation of you either do, he talked about his grandma of like how, or was it his aunt or something? It was like, when it comes to like a super whatever, you can't make it, you can't go too soon and you can't go too late. You got to find that like right moment, which even Harry is like, when is the right moment? And then Jordan was like, and that's the $1 trillion question, because both of them being into someone that's a part of a part of the Charmed Ones, obviously him being like, I'm assuming this was about Macy and not about Abigail. I mean, could be mistaken, but I think regardless of everything, it's like him and Macy are friends, but I don't know. Maybe it's about telling her that he wants to try and make things work with Abigail. Maybe that's what that was supposed to be about. My assumption is just kind of like, Harry, you and Macy get together already. It's like, come on. But Jordan takes a push. He's like, are you sure this is going to work? And immediately passes out. Yep, there we go. And I even love that when he was in there, he used his American. I was like, Once again, if you're unaware, I get giddy about accents. So him putting on an American accent, I'm like, But nevertheless, Harry ends up running into Nadia when he was snooping around, but she thinks he's Jimmy. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Considering everything that's going down, the fact is that you're kind of tight with the Dark Lighter, I think is kind of interesting. Which, well, I'll go ahead and skip around, but the fact is we end up finding out at the end of the episode, it's like, oh, they start making out, so her and Jimmy are a thing, which is interesting, considering Jimmy kind of had such a fascination with Macy. But that conversation never came up when it came to Jimmy, but I guess maybe he knew that Nadia was kind of using him, or maybe he thought maybe they were special. There was some, because it just seems like maybe there was something there, I mean, if she finds out who he really is. But I mean, I don't know if she's going to jump to that conclusion or know that that's not Jimmy. Because I mean, a dark lighter works just like a white lighter. You can cover that up pretty easily. I don't know if there's any way to really distinguish between them, Hence why he was able to kind of fool people by pretending to be Harry, so. But what was interesting is while Jordan was knocked out, one of the witches that cursed, well, the witch in particular that had cursed him, ends up basically he's trying to be like, I'm doing my best to kind of balance the scales. And she's like, that's good and everything, but blood has to be paid with blood. And basically you have a long way to kind of balance those scales out. You know, it's not in your favor. But he talks about like, okay, Abigail said that maybe some of like the generations survived of like the witches that my ancestor killed and hung. Maybe I can help them out. And it's like, will that work? And it's like, yes, but don't trust a demon, because a demon is most likely giving you this advice because there's something in this for them. And then she starts saying this rhyme of like, the four, kind of making it, because like not all of them are around anymore. Only 4 remain, I think is what she was saying, but they can be unbound, which I'm like, what does that mean? I guess it's like, my initial thought was like, is that supposed to represent the fact is that doesn't mean they're necessarily good, meaning they're unbound, meaning they're not just on the side of good, they can be shifted to evil under certain circumstances. And then she said a line of the trio of light and dark, of dark and light will be fell, as in killed. And initially, because my mind was all over the place to try, I kept rewinding like, what does that mean? Because initially my brain was like, are we kind of going down because in the original show, because I made reference to this before, I think I did, remember there was a storyline where like demons there were these demons trying to become the charmed ones, because like, how do you beat the charmed ones? By being the charmed ones. So there are these demons that were training to be the charmed ones to kind of have the power necessarily to kill the charmed ones. Obviously didn't work out in their favor at the end, because they ended up dying anyway. The demon charmed ones. But I was wondering, it's like, oh, so I was like, so is that what Abigail's trying to do? Create her own version of the charmed ones to kind of be her bodyguard, to kind of keep her safe? Like, was that kind of the initial plan? Is that still potentially her plan? Like, was that the case? Is that what's helping these witches supposed to be? Like, is Jordan helping them going to, like, is it part of some ingredients to whatever it is that Abigail might be up to? Because let's not forget, she's the one that kind of, once again, she pointed this all in his direction. Hence why the witch was like, don't trust the word of a demon. Because obviously they have their own motives with this whole thing. So it's like, okay. But then immediately when it was like the trio of dark and light, and that's why I was like, okay, so is that supposed to mean, as like I brought up before, like a trio of dark being like a dark charmed ones versus our charmed ones who are the trio of light? Or was that implying a trio of dark and light? Hence the charmed ones kind of represent that to a certain extent, because Macy being part demon made her kind of dark. So there is a balance of dark and light amongst the charmed ones, so they're not just all light, there is darkness. But she's no longer a demon because her demon side was cut away. Like I said, if there's like more circumstances with that or not. Or, you know, like what that means. Like this 4 and this, that's what I'm saying. Because there's the 4 and then there's the trio. So like I assume the trio was supposed to represent just the charmed ones in general, but I don't know. Hence why, like I said, I'm all over the place on what this possibly could mean. I'd love to get to know your thoughts. Some people out there might have more of an idea of like, I think it means this and that. But that's where I'm at with it. I'm sure like literally minutes, if not hours after this recording, I'll be like, my mind also thinks this as well, because that happens from time to time. So I'm curious to find out what that means. It was something that Jordan was supposed to give a warning to the charmed ones about like what's coming. But there was also a part of me that's like, does it have anything to do with the source of all evil? Because remember, it's broken up into 3 pieces as well. Not unless this has, you know, that's why I'm like, because that could be the trio in itself. Now that I'm thinking about it, so not less like 3 witches found the 3 different pieces that they scattered. Because I felt like we know that they exist and they're scattered. And I brought that up before, like what if someone found them, what that could necessarily mean. No one else knows that except for the charmed ones, but if someone just accidentally stumbles across it, or that power in those fragments end up, you know, if those fragments end up kind of reaching out to people nearby, that could turn into a whole thing. Hell, for all we know, this might tie into the faction. I just said fraction. Faction. This might tie into their story. Like maybe that has something to do with why they are able to do what they're doing. Like maybe they're using one of the fragments as a means of transferring, because it's like we still don't know how they're actually going about, especially since they have no magic, because they're all humans, like how they're actually transferring these powers to these powers from these monsters into these dead people. So it's like not unless they have a fragment of the source's power, or not unless they have all 3 fragments, and like in this time frame they've gathered it all up, because we don't know, because it seems like the faction has been at this for a very long time. So who knows in the grand scheme of things. Like I said, while theories I'm throwing out there. But at the end, obviously, is like, Macy's still thinking about this whole Julian situation because it's like, oh, he's a perfect guy and everything, which Mel was like, yeah, but, if you're having doubts about this whole thing and like, you're being worried about telling Harry, because for her, it's like, me and Harry just became friends again. She's like, I don't want to jeopardize that. And it's like, and Mel's like, if he's not, even if he's a perfect guy, maybe he's not perfect for you. So that's still kind of, it's like, because for Macy, it's like, it's not just the whole being a witch thing. It's just like, in general, it's complicated because if she's too afraid to let Harry know about the relationship, and it just, because for her, I think it's like, she does like Julian, but I think it's just her heart is so conflicted about the whole thing. So it's hard to kind of take that full step forward when there's already part of this kind of got 1 foot, 1 foot out the door, 1 foot still inside, type of situation. So we'll kind of have to see. But obviously Jordan kind of is trying to remember the number of the car that, Nadia is in with Jimmy. So, contact the Charm ones and let them know what's up. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good